All right. Hello, hello, hello. Um, I hope the right people will see this. And I'm making this video because I believe the right people will see this. If one person sees this and is like, oh shit, I can relate to that, that's what I'm making this for. I've like put it off and put it off and put it off. And I don't know what I'm doing. There's a glare in my glasses. I try to fix it. I'm filming this in my bathroom. It's just a wreck. I don't even know how to upload a video. Like, I've literally never uploaded a video online, which is like crazy. But I tried Facebook like 10 years ago, and I was like, wow, this is horrible. Like, my mental illness is already through the fucking roof. My anxiety is through the roof. The last thing I need is like social media exacerbating this, right? um I really believe that like the person or people that need to see this, that could maybe get something from it, will get what they need. Because when I first got sober, I didn't have I couldn't find anything that like spoke to me and like told my story. And I know my story is not going to be anybody else's, and no one's story is anyone else's story, but hopefully somebody who feels like they can't live will see this and be like, wow, maybe I can live too. Because I've been sober for going on, this will be year number 4, my 4th year sober. I was a junkie, an IV drug addict for 13 years. And I had really gotten to this place of just like acceptance that, you know, that this is it, that this is like my life, that I'm just a natural born junkie. And I had this like mantra, not literally a mantra, but basically I was just going to get high until the day I die. And I had like accepted that. But my problems went so much deeper than that, because, you know, drugs are just, they are what they are. You know, they create problems, and addiction is a problem, and it will take your life, but it's not the start of your problems. It's always like deeper, you know. And people that love themselves don't smoke crack. People that can live life and that are okay with themselves and can live, don't have to stick a needle in their arm so they can like feel alive or feel something. And that's what I could never do. I could never live. And so by the time I got to like my 30s, you know, I had, within this 13-year period of addiction, I had 4 years of sobriety. I went back to school, I got my bachelor's degree, like things were looking up. But it turns out I was just kind of like going through these motions of life, and I knew it deep down that something was off. I thought it was just life though. I thought, oh, it's just life, or it's just me, and I'm just gonna like go through these motions and it'll all be okay, and it'll just sort itself out. And that was followed by like the biggest relapse of my life, which it started off with me in the hospital for 2 months. I almost died. I shot up MRSA directly into my bloodstream. I became septic. I woke up in the ICU in the process of dying. Like, I was in renal failure, liver, kidneys. I was on a ventilator, like obviously a feeding tube, a catheter. It was like horrific. I had to get IV antibiotics. The next step was open heart surgery. And that's how my like friends and family knew that I had relapsed, because I almost died. And I was in the hospital for 8 weeks, and I was like a full-blown heroin addict, having people like come to the hospital and, you know, give me shit before I even was discharged from the hospital. I had like every single ramification of addiction and of unchecked mental illness, because they go hand in hand from my experience. I had every single ramification that like a person can have. And it didn't matter. I think rock bottom is overrated, at least for some people, and it was overrated for me because, like, there is, like, no such thing as rock bottom. I mean, unless you decide to get out of it. But I lived in rock bottom, and I had, like, accepted that. So how did I learn to live? How did I learn to love myself? How did I learn to respect myself and get sober? Like, that's people that can't answer that question and that just feel like they're a natural born junkie. Like I felt I was a natural born junkie. Some people have to be cautionary tales, and that was me. I was like meant to be a cautionary tale, and I believed that. I knew that down to my marrow, that best case scenario, I was going to be like, a cautionary tale for like an immediate family member. That was best case scenario. So how, did I get it together? What did I learn? I'm going to tell a little bit of my backstory. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about addiction. I'm going to be talking about mental illness. I may talk a little bit about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, self-harm, all that stuff, because that's a part of my past. I'm going to really try to keep it like, away from anecdotes and just kind of share like the message. But I guess that's like a trigger warning for anybody that this is going to be kind of heavy, but life is kind of heavy, right? I guess I'm going to start at the beginning. I do not have memories from a time before I hated myself. Like, I did not know how to live. I just felt like literally every single person on the planet like had this handbook or like this secret or insider information on how to be okay and how to live. I always felt like I was born in the wrong time. I felt like, oh, I was supposed to be born in the 60s or the 70s. I was supposed to be born in the fucking 1920s or in the 1800s. So I could have been like in my 20s in the 20s. Like, I felt like I was born in the wrong state, the wrong part of the wrong state, the wrong family, the wrong body. I didn't even know how to be comfortable like being a human being. I was that kid, like when I was really little, that like I cried if I had to throw up. I cried when I had to poop. I hated pooping. I just felt disgusting. I just hated being in my body, and I hated being like a human being, which is weird to say, but that's how it felt. And I remember being like 4 years old, and like from age 4 through like mid-childhood, I had this like daydream where I would pretend like if I sat really, really still, I could like sit in the middle of class. This started, like I said, when I was in preschool, like 4. But I had this fantasy where if I could sit really still and not move a muscle, that I could like shrink inside of myself to like where I was the size of like a tiny little peanut, and I could disappear and keep like my human shell and nobody would know I was gone. And looking back, I'm like, wow, that's like really dark and kind of sad, and it didn't make any sense, and I didn't know why I felt like this immense discomfort with myself and with life, but I did, and to kind of make it worse in a way is that it was inexplicable. Like, I was from a 2-parent household. My parents, when Dad died, my parents had been married over 50 years, and I have exactly one memory of them having a disagreement. And it wasn't even like a fight, it was just a disagreement. I had like this, good childhood, and I was a good student, and I was polite, and I got good grades, and I smiled, and, I never like caused any waves, I never caused a stir. Like, nobody knew how uncomfortable I was navigating through life. Um, I do have like this list of diagnosed mental illnesses, and for the longest time I thought like every professional I talked to was like wrong. But then finally, when I talked to one of my favorite therapists, I was 34. It was after I was almost murdered by my boyfriend, which is um, that's a long story, and that's another story. And that was really like kind of the catalyst of my sobriety. But you know, I did live from that experience, and he died, and so I just definitely want to be able to give it the time it deserves. I'm going to talk about it, and I don't even know if anybody wants to hear like some macabre like story time. But anyway, after I was almost killed, I had PTSD like severely, and I was talking to my therapist, and I really liked her, and I was like, do you really think like I have bipolar? Do you really think borderline is a real thing? It seems like just kind of sexist, or it just seems like, oh, I'm fun, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm just fun. If I was a guy, I wouldn't have anything diagnosed. Like, I knew I had anxiety, but bipolar, borderline, ADD, I was like, are you sure? Do you really believe like I have these problems? And she was like, yeah, you might not like labels, which I don't really like labels, but she's like, yeah, you do. So I'm sure all these like budding mental illnesses inside of myself, and a personality disorder and all this stuff, I'm sure those were factors in like why I just found it exceedingly hard to like be in my body and be in my mind and just be in reality. That was a factor, and I don't really know what the other reasons were. I've had professionals ask me, oh, have you had any like childhood neglect or major childhood trauma? Didn't have that. Like I said, I really came from like an ideal family in a lot of ways, and no family's perfect, and every family has kind of behind the scenes issues. But there was no rhyme or reason to it, and so I just kept like all of these feelings of dis-ease, discomfort inside of myself. And I just smiled, and everybody thought, oh my god, Jamie's like the cutest, sweetest, blah 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 blah, she gets such good grades, she's so polite, and I just kind of like faked it, hoping to make it, and that never happened. Through elementary school, middle school, I get in high school, and I have like this like inability to live. And like I said, I could feel this my whole life. I have no memories of a time before I hated my body. I don't know where this like innate sense of unworthiness came from, but it was there. But I believed kind of like the same lie that all wallflowers and teenagers with like a bunch of angst and people that kind of don't fit in when you're a teenager, it's like you're told this lie that college is going to be like this amazing time, and don't worry, you don't feel like you fit in now, but these people that are like kicking ass in the game of life, that are your high school peers, this is their peak. So let that sink in, and take some solace in the fact that the people that are excelling at high school are peaking in high school, and your time's right around the corner, and it'll all be so much better when you go to college. And I did. I was always going to go to college. There was never a time when I was not going to go to college. So I went to college, and I was like, okay, this is it. I'm out of my parents' house. I don't have to go to like Catholic mass on Sundays. I don't have to like pretend. I can just study what I want to, and I'm gonna like be okay. Guess what the fuck? Spoiler alert. College, I do have a lot of fun memories from college, but it wasn't like what I was banking on. I was banking on college being like my time. And like with everything, I took myself with me. And so I didn't I didn't like my major. I switched majors like every semester, every other semester. Like I literally switched majors like 5, 6 times in 4 years. And pretty soon, flash forward to age 21, I am now entering in my senior year at college. Like, time is up, the future is now. It was time to pick a major, really start thinking about a career, just get over it. I would tell mom, like, I've been telling her for years, like, something is wrong with me. I am not okay. I have like these mental issues. I have these problems. I knew I could feel like this destructiveness, self-destructiveness inside of me. And I knew I had self-destructive tendencies. But nobody in my family did drugs. Nobody in my family like even really drank. And I was a good girl and who got the good grades and had the pretty smile and was like super polite. So I was just banking on it kind of sorting itself out. And by the time I was 21, it was like worse than ever. And the way I saw it was, I viewed life from age 21 to 34. I kind of viewed life from one of two ways. I was like, I can either, pick a job, pick a career, just shut up and do it, go to a job I can tolerate with a boss I can't stand and coworkers I can, I like even less, pay my taxes to the man and go home and like Netflix and chill. I could get a hobby, but oh wait, I don't have any hobbies, so I'll just like watch the same, 2 good shows and shitty TV until I die and wait to die. And I would still be miserable. I would still not have a reason to want to wake up in the mornings, which, I had never had. Or I can do drugs and, it's a temporary feeling. It's synthetic. It's not real. People would say that like that mattered. When you can't feel and all you feel is like this, like dull, throbbing ache of like unworthiness and emptiness. When that's like your resting state of being and you just don't know how to live life, it doesn't matter if it's synthetic. It's something, drugs were a reason to wake up in the morning. It was like a passion. For the first time in my life, when I started doing drugs, I had a passion. And if I'm going to be depressed and unhappy and feel like I can't live in my body, I can't live in my skin, I can't live with my mind, if I'm not going to be able to live or feel like I'm going to be able to live either way, why not at least feel the most amazing feeling in the world, which was getting high, right? And if that's like your two options, that's why I could never, choose to do the, quote unquote right thing, because, why would I? I was going to be depressed either way. Why not just get high and at least feel like this respite from myself? And that's what needle dope was. And so I like practically made this conscious decision to jump headfirst into addiction. Because when I would shoot up, it's like I was like born, I felt like I was born to drown. And when I would get high, it's like, I could breathe, and it was temporary and it was fleeting and it was just like this small little air pocket, but it was better than nothing, right? So, when you're that turned around in your mind and you're that dependent on something outside of yourself, whether it's drugs or a relationship or, whatever, anything external, if you're that dependent on it for your sole source of happiness and validation and worthiness, it's going to be bad. And needle dope was like, gave me, this sense of worthiness where I could like be okay in my mind for a second. So, needless to say, consequences came pretty quickly. Within 3 months, I like, within the first month of shooting up, I quit school. I had a full academic scholarship, gave it up, like, willingly. I lost my place. I became a drug felon. I got charged with felonies, which eventually, a year later, would actually, like, be official, that I was a drug felon. I obviously went to jail. I just was lost. And what people didn't understand was that it seemed like a shock for everybody. Like, oh my God, this happened so fast. How did I go off track? It must have been like I got mixed up with the wrong crowd. But they were just seeing the external chaos that I had felt my entire life. And this is why, every bad decision, every, like, for somebody else it might have been rock bottom, but for me it was just like confirmation and validation that this was like where I was supposed to be. So how did I get out of that? Like I said, I had every consequence, like, of addiction possible. I ended up going to prison and out of jail. I was homeless. For a year, I was a prostitute, like a straight up prostitute. For that time period, I was in, like, abusive relationship after abusive relationship. I did have that 4-year period of extended sobriety, but like I said, that was followed by the biggest relapse of my life. So when I met the guy who is deceased now, when I met my boyfriend that tried to kill us, it was, I guess, a murder-suicide is what you want to call it. I met someone that was like me. That's what we do. Birds, of a feather flock together, and birds with broken feathers flock together. I met somebody who is like on the edge, and within a year, he would be dead, and I would be like barely alive. But the funny thing is like when I woke up in the hospital and I began to process, okay, this person that you care about, that you still care about, is dead. They tried to kill you. What the fuck am I going to do with my life? It was weird because like everybody was looking at me, and my family was like, oh, well, this has to be it. Like, this literally has to be it. You have to, there is no rock your bottom other than death. I had been so close to death, not just that time. When I got MRSA, I was close to death. When I overdosed, like serious overdoses involving like medical intervention, waking up in the back of the ambulance, like, not knowing what the hell's going on, missing hours of time. The first time I ever overdosed, I was, what year was it? I think 2008 or 9. It was on fentanyl, and it was my first overdose. It was, this is like another story for another time, but it was literal divine intervention that I lived. I was supposed to get high in my apartment that night, off of fentanyl. And I knew it was strong, but it was new to me, at least, to West Virginia back in 2008. I think it was 2008. But I didn't know how serious it was. And, nobody knew. It was just like, oh, this feels like better than the rest. I had like this disregard for my life. And I was supposed to sit in my apartment, and it was a duplex, and get high and just, enjoy my buzz. But instead, through like this weird series of random events that I consider to be like literal divine intervention, I ended up with an EMT and like my boyfriend at the time, and a couple other people at my house, which when they came in, I was evidently blue, and like I said, I was already blue. And I woke up like 5 hours later. I heard like muffled, frantic talking. It was my boyfriend on the phone, my boyfriend at the time on the phone, like being like, what do I need to do? I don't think she's gonna make it. My chest hurt, my equilibrium was off, I couldn't think. I was like having to balance myself to walk. It was horrific. And he was like, oh yeah, an EMT was just here, like randomly, and kept you alive for like the past, 4 hours or whatever, but she's gone now. And it was just like so freak. But the point is that was the first time I overdosed. And it was like a miracle that I didn't just sit on my couch and die that night. And like nothing stopped me. And when you feel like I do, and just like hated yourself, and just feel like you cannot live life, period, point blank, with drugs, without drugs, I could not live life. Everything that happened that was horrific was just confirmation that of my ineptitude. So after I was almost like stabbed to death and had my throat slit by my boyfriends, at the time, I woke up in the hospital and it was like, Jesus Christ, near-death experiences are overrated too. Rock bottom's overrated, and now near-death experiences, like the bloody kind, those are overrated. Like, my God, what am I gonna do? But that was the start of my journey to sobriety. And what changed wasn't the fact that it was a near-death experience. It wasn't the blood and the violence. There was something that happened that made me see that maybe there was more to me than a life of like emptiness and pain and self-loathing, and obviously drugs. When I was literally fighting for my life, my boyfriend and I, we were fighting each other for my life. I went into fight or flight mode, and as somebody that has always been like interested in psychology and the human brain, that was my first major in college. It was my first love. I ended up getting my bachelor's degree during my period of sobriety in behavioral science. So I was always like interested. What's fight or flight actually feel like? I wonder how that works. And the amazing thing about it was that it was the first time in my life where I had nothing but the will to live. I mean, the depth of that is like mind-boggling. I had a will to live, and I had accepted that I was going to die with a needle in my arm. I had accepted that, this was it. And I'm going to get high, like I said, till the motherfucking day I die. Because what else is there? I had accepted that, and I was just ready for whatever came from that acceptance. And then I was put in a situation to where I, for once, was out of my head and just going on this will to live that I did not think existed. And it was, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I lived through this. Doctors, the cops that were there that day, nobody, people were like, oh my God, they couldn't believe I lived. The state troopers told my mom, like, we have never seen a crime scene where there is that much blood and anybody lives. The doctors and EMTs told me, like, you've lost half the blood in your body. I was in surgery for 48 hours. I couldn't use my hands for over a month because they were both in casts. I had hundreds of stitches. Like, it was not, he did not intend for me to live. It wasn't some half-assed attempt. But let me just say this, you know, he only tried to do to me that day what I had been, you know, trying to do to myself, albeit inadvertently, my entire life, you know. And he was the victim of himself that day. He was the victim of his demons, so to speak, that day. And I was nearly the victim of myself that day. And I do hope that he has found some sort of peace that he could obviously not find while here, you know. So I woke up in the hospital. I was 34. And I was like, wow, there is a desire to live inside of me. And maybe, just maybe, where I did live through this like hellish experience, maybe there is like a purpose for me to live. But how? That was always the question. And that's why I'm making this for the people who don't know how to live. Because that's what I could never figure out. And I didn't know what was missing. Okay, so you have mental illness. Okay, so you have a personality disorder. I'm thinking to myself, saying you. I mean, how can I do it? Like, you know, it just seemed like I said everybody in the whole fucking world had this like manual on how to be okay. And I swear, I feel like there is something wrong with my brain. You know, I'll put wrong in quotation marks, whatever, but I feel like there is something wrong with my mind to where like that has not been diagnosed, because I am, and always have been, clinically self-conscious. Like, I'm working on it. I'm, you know, getting better, but I'm still there. I'm like clinically self-conscious. And I keep thinking, is there like a term for this? It's like my regular state is like that when you smoke pot and you kind of get like really paranoid, which I don't smoke pot anymore. I don't really want to, but it's like not the good pot feeling where it's like, oh, I'm creative and everything tastes delicious and music is so great and the sun is shining, yay, and everything's so funny. It's not that pot high. It's like the really self-conscious pot high, where it's like you just feel like you're stuck in your head and everybody's like talking about you and they're going to think you're all stupid. They're all going to think you're stupid. Like, that's how I felt all the time. And so I still had all of these issues. I had all of this physical trauma, and I had years, like 30 years since I really started having solid memories at age 4 of like this emotional trauma, mental illness, and that had just gone rampant, an addiction, which was still there. Even though it's like, okay, I have a will to live beyond that. And one of the biggest things for me, and this is kind of like what I've learned, okay, like Cliff's Notes of this story time here. What I've learned is that will to live is there inside of everybody. And even if you don't know it, and if you think like I did, like in your heart of hearts, that you are meant to be no more than a junkie, you are meant to be no more than a cautionary tale. It doesn't matter how far down the wrong path you've gone to turn around and start going a different direction. The will to live is there, and you don't have to be in fight or flight mode. You don't have to have a near-death experience to know that will is there. Even if you don't feel it, and even if you don't know it, it's there. Because what prevented me from feeling able to live, feeling worthy of life, was my ego. That wasn't me. It was my ego the whole time, you know. And because I didn't know who I was, I couldn't accept who I was. And because I didn't think I was worthy of figuring out who I was, I mean, I just thought, worst case scenario is just the way it was. But at the heart of every person is the desire to live. And at the heart of every addict and every person who feels like they can't live is, in my humble opinion, this feeling of unworthiness. So you have to, in conclusion, you have to radically accept and start to accept two things. You have to believe that you want to live. And even if you don't think you do, you do. Your soul wants to live. Your ego might not. And when you think, oh, I don't want to live, that's your ego speaking. Your soul wants to live. You just have to accept it and accept that you are worthy of life. And it's funny, I had to do, even if it's heroin or weight loss, it's really the same principles. Like, I lost 25 pounds since I've been sober. And I could not lose a single pound until I believed it was possible for me to lose a single pound. I couldn't lose one, let alone 25. I couldn't even begin to think about living life until I believed it was possible for me to live life and that I was worthy of living life. And the fact that you're here, the fact that I'm alive, is proof that I'm worthy, And growing up, before I got into drugs at age 21, it's like I could never be good enough to be good, And then when I got into drugs, it's like I could never be bad enough to be happy, which is really sad, But you are worthy because you're listening to this. Like, you are worthy of life, and you have this will to live. You just have to give yourself a chance to discover it, because I'm telling you now, near-death experiences are overrated. Rock bottom is bullshit for some people. For some people, it's not. But I'm not making this for people who, just like had this bad thing happen and then was like, okay, that's when I pulled myself up by the bootstraps. Because when I started being like, okay, I'm going to try to give it a chance, because I'm going to try to give life a chance. I'm going to try to give myself a chance. I'm going to try to give self-acceptance a chance. I started thinking that I'm like really going to give it my best shot when I was in the hospital recovering from the attack. I had no fucking clue of where to start. I was in my mid-30s and I literally had no idea who I was. I mean, I had things that I liked. I had interests, but that's not you. That's just like, oh, you like great movies and cats and have good taste in music. That's awesome, but that's still just your ego. That's not you. And your ego, from my understanding, from my experience, is kind of like a reflection of your soul. But I mean, if you look in the mirror, it's not you you're looking at, it's a reflection of you. You're so much more than that reflection, and you're worthy of life just by living. And when I started to ask myself, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I was starting from scratch. I was in the hospital, but I mean, I was homeless. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a phone. I had this 2 felonies and this really sordid past of addiction and self-loathing and just, this chaos that followed me everywhere and had been following me. And I had no idea where to go, who to go to, what to do. I had to answer that, who am I? And I didn't know what to do. So I started looking at people who were like, you know, some of the bigger names that I discovered in recovery communities. And to be honest, it left a lot to be desired, because I felt like nobody's story was really like telling me, it was kind of like a reflection of my story. Like, how in the fuck do you live? You know, okay, I want to live. Okay, I'm going to give myself a chance. I'm going to take this chance. I'm going to try to figure it out. I'm going to try to love myself. Like, now what? You know? And I started hearing and reading and watching TED Talks and all this stuff. And everybody seemed to have, that I found, you know, at least, everybody seemed to have like a rock bottom story, where it was like a from that day forward story, you know, from that moment on, from that day forward, you know. And I said never again, and it wasn't easy, and they always threw that in. It wasn't easy, but somehow, some way, I don't even fucking know, but I just managed to do the thing I couldn't do. And I was like, how do you live? You know, Jesus Christ, somebody help me. So I had to start small, like really, really small. Like I said, I had to work on understanding the depth of what those statements mean. I am worthy of life because I'm alive. I'm alive, so therefore I am worthy. I am deserving of life because I am alive. I love myself, and I'm going to give myself a chance. Like, to really understand the depth of those statements, I started from there, like just trying to get to know myself and love myself. And you know, sobriety for me, that's another thing. Like, people that had a rock bottom and the horrible thing happened and they turned it around and they're all better now. Those stories are not my story, and they might not be yours either. Sobriety for me was a process. It took me from start to finish, from waking up in the hospital in July of 2018 to being 100% fully sober, in terms of having built, you know, this entire foundation of long-lasting sobriety that gets stronger every day. That entire process of true sobriety took 15 months. 5, a year and 3 months. It was from July of 2018 to October of 2019. It was obviously the opposite of an overnight success story. And that's what I was waiting on, was for it to be overnight. You know, and every time I would fail in the past, like when I had this extended period, the one time I was sober during the 13 years of active addiction, the one time I was sober, I was like, okay, I'm just going to quit. And I got out of prison and I had to go to rehab, and I got this. I'm going to just stop doing all that stuff. And I lasted, you know, like I said, for nearly 4 years, but that wasn't sobriety. You know, the goal isn't to get to the next day without doing drugs. The goal is to get to the place where you don't want to do drugs again. Because like I said, happy people don't stick needles in their veins so they can feel something. People that love themselves don't, you know, want to smoke crack because it's death. I mean, in tarot, the devil card is the card of addiction, and that's not just like aptly named. You know, it is the opposite of life. You know, drugs and addiction, they take your life and then they'll take your life. You know, you will ultimately die eventually, but before you die, I mean, your hopes, your dreams, you know, things that you thought was funny, material things, you know, everything that addiction can take from you, it will eventually take your life. And so it's like, it is like the devil card. It is like the death card, you know, like death. So I started to get to know myself. And here's another thing. I had to learn how to be selfish in the right way. Yeah, I think as females, as women, but really just as humans, I guess. I mean, definitely for women, let's just stick with that. For women, especially, we are kind of taught to not be selfish, to just kind of be agreeable and polite, and not to really make any waves, not to really stand up for ourselves or what we feel is right, or everyone's needs and desires, put others first. And I bought into that hook, line, and fucking sinker. And that's what led me to using, was part of it, was buying into all this bullshit that, just fake it till you make it. One day you'll be okay. Just, be polite and just do the right thing and you'll be happy. That's not true for everybody, because it wasn't true for me. And so I had to learn how to be selfish in the right ways. And that means through self-love and self-discovery. So I started to meditate. I meditate every day. I started to do daily affirmations. I started to journal. I always thought I would be good at like writing, or at least journaling and expressing myself through writing. But once again, if you have no sense of self and you have no sense of self-worth, obviously, it was like a mile. I didn't start writing, so I started writing. But it was a milestone for me to get Tom's toothpaste, which was toothpaste. It was a toothpaste brand that I had always wanted to try. And, I never thought, oh, I'm not worthy enough of getting the toothpaste I want. But that's what my actions were. It took me to go into fight or flight mode and have a lifetime of self-loathing and self-destruction and all these myriad consequences. It took me to my mid-30s to believe I was worthy of the toothpaste that I wanted to try. And you know what? It's fucking awesome, and it's fluoride free. And I'm just saying, it's worth like the extra dollar. And I'm worth the extra dollar, right? But, I think I'm just going to wrap it up, but by saying that life is short, and, it is beautiful. And I know if I had not taken a chance on myself and on self-love and on knowing my worth and believing I am worthy, I know I would have been dead by now. Because addiction rates and overdoses and overdose death rates, anxiety, mental illness, obesity, all of these things are just getting worse and worse and worse every day. And people are dying every day. Good people are going to die today without, how many people are going to die without knowing, damn, I'm like worthy of a life, and so that's who I'm making this for. And I hope this will help somebody.